while since I really added to my repertoire on here. So I wanted to check in. Going live. As usual, we'll cut this up later and see how that does. If you have ADHD, the constant puzzle of integrating your body and mind is such a investigation. We're like always going into day by day trying to figure out how to adjust, how to find a rhythm, how to create enough structure in life to feel good and to not be constantly pulled off of our groove. One of the things that is super common with any form of neurodiversity is that the bodily sensations are processing really differently, and it can be super distracting. In fact, I think that's a huge feature of why we first identify ADHD in the behavior of young children when they're hyperactive, that we see that part of the trait first, although ADHD is actually a situation that's happening throughout the nervous system. It's a feature or a functional type of nervous system. So I am personally always trying to find ways to manage my nervous system and keep myself as regulated as possible, deal with any disruptance to my executive function potential, and stay on the top of my game. And sometimes my game looks really great, and sometimes it's not that impressive from the outside. Honestly, the acceptance that I have for myself through this process is probably way more significant than any particular skill or behavior. It's the ongoing self acceptance and returning to the process of sifting out what works best for you. So, in the last week, as part of my exploration and trying to always open up my tool set, I got to hit two other practitioners. I'm a massage therapist, and I really believe that body work is the core of healthcare that's missing from what we're being offered today. So there's a huge range of possible activities and experiences that you can experience inside of the bodywork world. And I had two very different experiences this week. One was a structural session with a friend of mine who has recently finished a credential for like a pretty intensive, like bordering on physio or like physical therapist set of skills where they're using pulleys and all of these contrastive movements to try to unlock the flow and coordination in different muscular systems. And there's a lot of focus on breath work and active breath work, cognitive, conscious takeover of the breathing rhythm of the body. So in that session, I showed up and kind of just got into sports attire, basically had an assessment of standing postural evaluation where he's like looking at my form and noticing the rotation in my hips and noticing the way that the ankle stacks over the the knee is in alignment and then the hip is in alignment, and you have this corridor of architectural structure that's running up and down the body. So anywhere in the joints in that whole system, you can have a small tweak that's actually impacting a wide range of locations in the body. You can have a lot of consequence from that. So we started out with this postural assessment. I do a postural assessment with my clients sometimes as well, but I don't do any exercise coaching type stretching guidance. I do a lot of isolation assistance, helping people cognitively be aware of the sensations and the movement in the body. So he started me out with that, and we moved into some different positional contrasts. And that was a really cool experience, which resonated on some of my neurological training, where when we're occupying space with the body, we can have a tendency to process information in different locations in slightly different ways. And so if your arm is behind you the neuromuscular experience of that movement behind you can actually be really different from what's happening when your arm is doing a very similar movement, but it's in front of your body. And that's because the brain is processing our spatial awareness in a way that is really complex, and we can kind of intervene with that. So that was a cool angle where I saw what was going on with this treatment style of structural integration when he put me in different inverted positions, had me breathe in angles to the ground where gravity was assisting me to become aware of what I was processing in the body, and developing that somatic consciousness where my intervention on my own breath was a lot more um, dialed in over time. So that structural integration experience was a big contrast to the craniosacral, which I just had this morning. And that was so lovely as well. Really different personalities of the practitioners and really different styles of approach. So the craniosacral session resembles a more conventional massage therapy or bodywork session. And so I came in, we chatted. She asked me some really good questions about my lifetime experience in my body. And I ended up telling her some of the stories of my birth injury, where the structure of my neck was disrupted in the course of being born. And that has had consequences through my entire life. I spent part of my childhood with a cervical collar on, and there's aspects of just being more vulnerable to positional accidents and taking impact in a way that disrupts that over and over. So getting to talk that through with her was really helpful, to just have that experience of sharing and feeling understood on my embodied experience by somebody who really has the language to guide through that conversation. So that by itself was healthy and enjoyable, and I know that that's really important for a lot of my clients as well, to be able to tell their stories and talk through their experience in the body. Once she was ready to have me on the table, of course I'm like undressing and getting under the sheets, and she comes back in after washing her hands, the normal set of experiences. But whereas with, say, a Swedish massage, they're gonna touch in some different ways and get you settled onto the table, start getting you relaxed, and then start doing these sweeping strokes with like medium pressure on the skin. Craniosacral has a long holding tendency. And so she started with hand on the sacrum, and just the energetic experience of that is really sensational. It's pretty distinctive. And I've worked with other practitioners that did soft touch or did energy work, but I'd never actually had a true craniosacral session as such before. So that was a cool experience for me, and really fun to have it mentally like in a high contrast with these two different dynamics with different practitioners this week. Over the course of the craniosacral session, she had long holding on each of my limbs, and that really allows the neurology to cascade and reorganize as your cognitive awareness dials into the spatial experience that your arm is having or that your leg is having. And I know craniosacral is based really heavily on the concept of the spinal fluid, which is where it gets its name. Is that the spinal fluid, of course, is in the spinal column, and it's running up and down the chamber from the sacrum to the cranium. And so this is the line that is really relevant if you're addressing spinal fluid as a specific concern. So cranial sacral. But of course, it's having an impact everywhere throughout the body. And so it was a philosophy that I was familiar with. I've actually read the Upledger books, which is from the institute where the craniosacral is really developed and credentialed, and have appreciated that concept for a long time. And so it was rewarding and sweet for me to get to do this experience with my neighbor nearby practitioner, who kind of gave me that experience for the first time. So yeah, it was a big contrast with this movement based, active approach of structural integration versus craniosacral, which was very passive receptive and very slow movements. And both of those experiences, I could feel activating my nervous system in different ways and helping me to engage my own embodiment and kind of graduate to deeper levels of somatic awareness. I would be pretty happy to see either of these practitioners again, depending on what I was looking for at this time. Right now, I'm honestly shopping around to meet people and get a sense of the breadth of practice that's happening in my specific community with the practitioners that I could be exchanging referrals with, and people who I have overlapping clients who are visiting me, sometimes visiting them, depending on their insurance. So I really appreciate that experience, getting to visit with different practitioners, see their spaces, see their energy and the way that they're running their business, see the contrast between their treatment approaches. And I really encourage any other healers or massage therapists, especially, to go ahead and book and be proactive with your self-care, while also building your network and becoming more familiar with the people who are around you and the offerings that you can experience inside of your own community as well. So thanks for hanging out with me. I'm Adela Fever, and I'll see you next time.